Let me tell you a story you think you already know. Because every story you've ever heard about that garden, about that tree, about the end of the world, you heard from the winners. You never heard it from me. I was there first. Before the man opened his eyes, before the woman drew breath, I was already moving through the long grass, certain that I was the one writing what came next. That's the story I want to tell you. The story of how I won. And if you listen closely, you may notice the one thing I refused to notice. The single thread running under all of it, until it was far too late. They called the garden Eden, and it was his. Every leaf, every river, every animal answered to his voice, and not to mine. So I did not raise my voice. I lowered it. I found the woman alone beneath the one tree he had forbidden, and I did not command her. I asked her a question. Did God really say? That was all. A crack in a door. Because I'd learned the oldest secret there is. You don't have to push someone out of paradise. You only have to make them doubt the one who built it. She looked at the fruit, and the fruit hadn't changed. But the way she saw it had. So she took, she ate. She gave it to the man, and he ate. And in that instant, I felt it. The whole bright garden tilting toward the dark. And I told myself, I've done it. I've unmade his finest work with a single sentence. Then he came, walking in the cool of the day. And they hid, the two of them, crouched in the leaves like guilty children. And I waited for him to rage, to undo them, to start again, to admit that I had broken his world. But he did not start again. He turned to me, and he spoke a curse over me. And I was so drunk on my victory that I only half listened. I heard dust. I heard crawling. I heard enmity. And then he said something I let slide past me like water. That the woman would have a seed, and that her seed would crush my head, while I struck only at his heel. A head for a heel. I laughed at the arithmetic. A bruised heel against a crushed skull is not a fair trade. So I assumed he had simply lost. But that one sentence, spoken over the wreckage of my first triumph, that was not a threat. That was a verdict. He had just told me how I would die, and I was too proud to hear it. So I set out to prove him wrong. 4,000 years of it. I would chase that seed down every century, into every womb and every throne, and snuff it out. And every single time, I was certain I had won. I went to the first two brothers, and I found the jealousy already smoking in the elder one. The younger one's offering had been accepted, and his had not. And that small wound was all I needed, and I fanned it. Until Cain rose up in a field and spilled his brother's blood into the ground. First death, first grave. I called it mine. The line of the promised seed should have ended right there. But God raised up another son in Abel's place, and the line went on. Without my even noticing the door he'd left open, therefore I went wider. I poured corruption into the whole earth, until every thought of every heart was only evil all the time, and violence filled the world like a flood waiting to break. And then the flood came, and I stood in the rising water thinking, let it drown, let all of it drown. Let his promise sink with the rest. But one ark rode the water. One righteous man, 8 souls, and a covenant hung in the sky. The seed survived, the very ruin I had built to bury it. So I changed my plan. If I could not drown them, I would unite them. All of them. One tongue, one tower, climbing into his heaven. Mankind crowning itself a god without him. And I almost believed it would work. But he came down. He scattered the tongues, and the tower I had raised against him became nothing but a name for confusion. The nations I had gathered into one fist scattered to the 4 winds, every people speaking past the next. So I stopped trying to destroy the whole world, and went after the one bloodline the promise traveled through. I found them small and enslaved in Egypt, and I hardened a Pharaoh's heart, until he ordered every Hebrew son drowned in the river. Drown the boys, and you drown the seed. And the river took them, child after child, and Egypt did not even slow its work. But one mother laid her son in a basket and set him on that same river, and the water I meant to kill him carried him straight into Pharaoh's own house, raised at the table of the very king who ordered his death. The boy I tried to drown grew up to break Egypt in two and lead the whole bloodline out through a sea. Even my slaughter only delivered them. So I tried muscle. When the promise had built itself a kingdom, I raised a giant against it, 9 feet of iron and contempt, who mocked their armies and their God for 40 days, sent to crush their hope on an open field, while their soldiers shook, and no man would face him. Until a shepherd boy with a sling and 5 stones walked out, and the giant I had armored to the teeth went down with a stone in his skull. Struck, you will notice, in the head. And that boy became the king, whose own throne the promised seed would one day be born to fill. Every move I made, he turned. And here is the thing I still could not see. He was not reacting to me. He was steering me. So I stopped pushing from the outside, and I learned to rot a thing from within. That boy king had a son, Solomon, the wisest man who ever drew breath. And I did not fight his wisdom. I fed it. I gave him gold until his treasuries groaned, horses and ships, and 1,000 wives from 1,000 foreign altars. And one by one, I let them turn his heart, until the wisest king alive was burning incense to dead gods on the hills above God's own temple. The man who built the house of the Lord was raising shrines to Moloch and Ashtoreth in its very shadow. I had corrupted the very throne the promise was meant to fill, and I was certain the rot was too deep to cut out. But the kingdom I rotted only split and scattered, and the bloodline kept running on through the broken, exiled half I had written off. Out of Solomon's own ruined line, generations down through kings good and evil, the promised seed would still be born. The mess I made was a road I was paving for him, so I went after the voice. Whenever his word grew too loud, I raised a hand to silence it. I stirred up kings and queens to hunt his prophets through the wilderness. I had them stoned in the courtyards, sawn in two, dropped down dry wells to starve in the dark, hunted from cave to cave. Kill the messenger, and you kill the message. And for a while, the land fell quiet. But every prophet I silenced only made the word he carried louder. The blood I spilled became scripture. The warnings I tried to bury were copied and copied, read aloud for 1,000 years, and every one of them, a virgin, a child, a suffering servant, a king on a donkey, pointed down the centuries to the same coming seed. I was not erasing the prophecy, I was publishing it. That should have warned me. It did not. Because by now, I had set my eyes on something larger. I went up, past the dust, past the nations, and I stood in his own court among the sons of God. And I accused. There was a man named Job, blameless, the finest of all his servants. And I told the throne the truth as I understood it. He only loves you because you hedge him round and pay him well. Take it away, and he will curse you to your face. And God let me strip the man bare, his wealth, his 10 children in a single day, his very skin. Certain I had found the crack in faith itself, but the man sat in the ashes and would not let go. I had been allowed in, allowed to test, allowed to do my worst. I had wagered the whole of faith on a single broken man, and lost. Even my worst only proved the faith I swore could not exist. The promise kept moving down the centuries toward one woman, one child born in a stable under a star, while I clawed at the cradle and missed. And at last, I saw him, the seed, walking the earth as a man, hungry, alone, 40 days in the wilderness. And I thought, here is the heel I was promised. Here is where I strike. So I came to him with everything I had ever used. Doubt. If you are the Son, prove it. Throw yourself down. Hunger. Turn these stones to bread. Power. Bow to me just once, and every kingdom of the world is yours. The same 3 doors I had opened in the garden. But this time, the man did not reach for the fruit. He answered me with his Father's own words. It is written, it is written, it is written. And not one door would open. For the first time in all my history, I had nothing left to offer. Every weapon spent, every door slammed in my face. And I left him, the scripture says, until a more opportune time. I told myself that time would come. And it did. For 3 years I could not break him from the outside, so I did what had finally worked on Solomon. I went inside. There were 12 who walked with him, who ate his bread and heard every word. And into one of them, Judas, I poured the same old whisper, dressed up as silver, 30 pieces of it, the price of a slave. And the moment he slipped out into the night to sell his master, I rejoiced, because at last, I was not clawing at him from the dark. I was working inside the circle of light itself. I watched them turn on him, the crowds who had sung his name on Sunday, screaming for his blood by Friday. The priests, one of his own, for a fistful of silver. I moved through every one of them, and it was the easiest work I had ever done, because this time I was not fighting him. He was walking toward it. So I drove the nails through history. I watched them lift him on the wood, between 2 thieves. I watched the sky go black at noon. I heard him cry out, as the life left him. And I finally believed I had won. The seed was dead. The promise, a corpse. In a borrowed tomb, with a stone rolled across the door. And I had struck the heel at last. This was my masterpiece. This was the day the serpent beat God. But I had read the curse wrong from the very beginning. I struck the heel, and a heel wound does not kill. While I was busy with the heel, the head he had promised to crush was my own, because the tomb did not hold. On the 3rd morning, the stone was thrown back from the inside, and the dead man walked out into the garden. Another garden, alive, the wounds still in his hands, death undone behind him. And the death I had spent all of history building became the very door he used to walk back through. The cross was not my victory. It was the trap. And I had spent 4,000 years sharpening every tool to build it for him, when all along it was dug for me. And then I understood the sentence I had let slide past me in Eden. The seed of the woman, the crushed head. He had told me the ending on the very day I thought I had begun. So now I am what I have always been, a great red dragon, thrown down from heaven, cast out, raging along the edge of the world. And I know how it ends, because it has already been written in a book I refused to read, until I was the only one left in it. A lake of fire, a door that does not open, an ending with my name on it. I thought I was writing the story. I was never the author. I was only a line, and the one I tried to erase had written my defeat into the first promise. On the worst day I ever called my best. So before you go, ask yourself the one question I never dared to. If the serpent could not stop this story, who else has ever been able to?